Will the Menendez brothers be resentenced? Will Kaiser workers negotiate a deal? Will it be a great March Madness for UCLA and USC? We have some of those answers. My name is Armit Singh. It's your afternoon. Let's get answering. So we'll start with that first question, big developments in the case of the Menendez brothers and potential resentencing. Of course, during the election season, this was a huge conversation after the Netflix documentary and George Gascon filing a motion to have a judge reconsider the life with no possibility of parole sentence and resentence. Well, today, D.A. Hochman, who took office and said he would need to analyze the evidence, delivered a setback to the Menendez brothers, saying he opposes resentencing and will rescind the motion for resentencing filed by George Gascon. Now, Hochman said he reviewed the evidence. He presented a more cynical view of the evidence in a brief and in a conversation today. He says the Menendez brothers lied then and continue to lie about self-defense. And these words are important. He said that the Menendez brothers continue to lack insight into the crime and they continue to lack a taking of responsibility for the crime. Insight and responsibility. Remember those words. I'll talk about them in a second. Ultimately, the cynical view that he's taking says that the brothers did not necessarily show what they needed to. Let's take a listen to him, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
If they go ahead and finally come clean with the court, with the public, with the DA's office, with their own family members, and acknowledge all these lies, and then can be said to have fully and completely accepted responsibility for their actions, in the future, the court can weigh these new insights into making a determination as to whether they now qualify for rehabilitation and resentencing.
He left the door open a little bit, but it would require Eric and Lyle to overturn their entire view over decades of what they have been responsible for. Insight and responsibility. Those are the words that we heard repeatedly from D.A. Hochman, and those are callbacks by Hochman to Governor Gavin Newsom's denial of parole in another high-profile case to Sirhan Sirhan, the murderer of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Robert F. Kennedy, rather. Newsom's denial cited Sirhan's failure to exhibit insight and completely accept responsibility for his crime, and those are the words that we heard Hochman use today. So to recap all this, Hochman is opposing resentencing, but the hearing will go on nonetheless. It will occur on the 20th and 21st, and you heard Hochman leave a door open for the Menendez brothers to take more responsibility and show more insight. By the way, separately, Governor Gavin Newsom still has a power to offer clemency to free the brothers, and Governor Newsom also last month talked about a procedural change. He ordered the parole board to conduct a 90-day comprehensive risk assessment investigation into whether those brothers pose an unreasonable risk to the public, and he also wants there to be now changes to the parole process, which would have compulsory risk assessments at the beginning. This would be an advent in criminal justice on the back of this Menendez brothers case. Again, Hochman left the door open. We'll talk about all of that in a few moments with Mo Kelly. Moving now to the second question I posed at the top of the show, we're talking about the Kaiser workers who have been on strike for months now, and the mediation process begins today. Thousands of workers on strike since October. These negotiations are beginning, and Parker Collins is with us in East Hollywood to talk about it a little bit. Parker, I mean, 5 months of strikes that we're seeing here, and it seems like we're talking about the strikes every day, but finally, mediation and negotiation.
Amrit, I was out here last year when the strike began, and over these months, the tension and the frustration has continued to grow because they have not reached an agreement. They can't come to a compromise. At the same time, many of the union's demands have remained largely the same, revolving around issues such as pay, pensions, and patient scheduling. Both sides have been in contact with Governor Gavin Newsom. He called for them to get back to the table for mediation, and that process starts today. It could settle the strike by nearly 2,400 Southern California mental health therapists, social workers, psychiatric nurses, and psychologists. The mediators will be former Health and Human Services Secretary Dr. Mark Galey and former Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg, who helped end a similar strike up in Northern California. When asked about the talks happening today, all Kaiser Permanente would tell us is, quote, "We have agreed to work with mediators to see if we can resolve our differences." Striking union members told me staying hopeful is hard when it's taking so long to get to a deal.
It's very challenging, emotionally, financially, very challenging because, we don't get paid while we're on strike. We won't get paid when we go back. So we're really here advocating for our patients, for ourselves.
More than a year ago, Kaiser Permanente agreed to a multi-million-dollar settlement with the state of California, and this was after it came to light some patients experienced some pretty significant delays to get care. That is a particular issue the union has continued to highlight during this strike. Amrit?
All right, thank you, Parker Collins, for that latest update. These labor talks continue, and we see there with the Kaiser workers. We'll have to see where it all goes. Thanks for sketching out the terms as well. That's Parker Collins there talking to us about the Kaiser Permanente shakes. Oh, maybe a shakeup there in that negotiation, and a shakeup for sure this weekend in Westlake Village and the Malibu area. Magnitude 4.1 earthquake struck Westlake Village on Sunday afternoon. Shortly thereafter, the Malibu area had a few small quakes, magnitudes 2.5 to 3.3. Dr. Lucy Jones says this is the first magnitude 4 quake in Southern California this year, 2025. No damage reported, but people did say that they felt some shaking as far as Montebello. The Malibu region has recently become a hotbed for earthquakes. Malibu's seen 3 quakes larger than 4.0 in the last year, and in 2024, Southern California experienced 15 seismic sequences. That's the most in 65 years. Dr. Lucy Jones also says there's no data to suggest that the big one is more likely after a series of smaller quakes, but of course everyone is on edge, understandably, and it's been an interesting and difficult time there in Malibu with the fires, earthquakes, and so much more. And we continue to talk about what's happening here in Southern California. Some of the biggest news here was what we heard from the Menendez brothers case from DA Hochman. And we have here Mo Kelly, who can talk to us about that. Last time, Mo, you were here, you gave us some great circle perspective. It'd be great to get the political analysis from you, too.
Look out for Gavin Newsom on this one.
Oh, yeah, very interesting. As we talked about, Governor Gavin Newsom's got to say, and clemency a possibility. Before we do that with Mo, we're going to go to Robert Sands to talk a little bit about what's happening with the weather. Robert, I mean, we got these rains coming. We've been thinking about them. What do you got to say?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is sort of our last completely dry day out there. So clear. You can see out there looking out towards Century City. But we are tracking the next rain, so our Doppler radar, getting ready to pick up some of that. You still have some time. This is that storm right here. And we'll come back in about a couple minutes. And we'll take a look at the timing of this first wave here, the weaker one. And then we'll talk more about when we're expecting some heavier rain coming for us Wednesday and Thursday. Back in a moment.